Hi everybody, nice to see you. Thank you for coming along to the talk that I'm going to be running today. What I want to do is share a little bit about our journey and the work that we do in the UK, talk a little bit about the application of technology with children and young people's mental health, and then give some examples of the findings that we've had from the Neuro Champions program that we're running. Can everybody hear me? Yes, okay, that's a good start. Fantastic. Okay, so I have a question. Hands up, how many people in the room learn about brain at school? Fantastic. Did you all go to school in America? A mixture. Because I get a mixture of responses. In the UK, especially people who are probably aged between 30 and 55, not many people put their hands up. If they learn about the brain, it might have been learning about the structures in biology and touching upon it. But within the curriculum, and even now, the brain is not covered, and definitely not the links between the brain and mental health and emotions. So when we started the program, we started going out asking young people, what do you know about your brain? Because with young people, especially teenagers, their brain is in a rapid stage of development, specifically the frontal lobe. It impacts their behavior, how they respond and develop relationships, how they want to sometimes sleep in and not wake up early in the morning and need levels of sleep. So there's a lot of things that are happening with their brain, and often they don't know about what's going on for themselves. Coupled with the fact that 1 in 4 people over their lifetime will experience a mental health problem, so mental ill health. I'd probably say that statistic's rising. We all have mental health, and at some point that's going to be negative, and then we may descend into mental ill health, but 1 in 4 people. And of those mental health problems, 25% will start before the age of 14. Okay. So when we're thinking about interventions and programs, and if we know that of 1 in 4, 25% are starting before the age of 14, the question that we ask is, why are we not running preventative mental health programs in schools? Why are we not thinking about the environments where children and young people are, whether that's online or offline, and using them as effective spaces to be able to help them learn about themselves and how they can relate with others? And that's what we feel, and that's what we started doing. And the problem also is and it's probably the same in the UK, is in mental health care, the focus is always on intervention. So there's a problem, there's an illness. So people have got to start to present with a problem, and that might be anxiety, worries. More and more increasingly, it might be self-harm, suicidal thoughts. And where they present is in A&E, or accident and emergency, or hospital environments. The focus, and you can see that our prevention is not very focused, is not really laid on prevention. And the reason being is often we can't evidence prevention because we've got to evaluate it and follow people up long term. Financially, there's not always that much money to be made in preventing a health problem. And so therefore prevention might not be focused on. And so therefore intervention is where a lot of the treatment and a lot of the focus and a lot of research is placed in mental health. So at Chanua, we were focused on thinking about how we could focus on prevention and create something that could be fun and engaging for young people, could teach them about their brain and neuroscience through play, but also be able to provide an effective intervention and a preventative program for children and young people's mental health. So in the UK, with our team, we developed Neuro Champions. And Neuro Champions is a program that runs to train. So it's an offline program that runs in schools, in hospitals, that supports young people to train to learn about their brains, to learn about mental health, how they can support with other young people, and how they can also use technology in a positive way to improve their mental health, so they can become content creators rather than consumers in their constantly plugged-in digital world. So we aim to reduce the impact of mental health, quite simply. We want to create healthier children and young people, and we want to improve access. And that doesn't mean that access is clinical support, but access to support that can help young people identify and provide solutions for them to improve their mental health and well-being. So how it worked and how we started. We wanted to take knowledge about the brain and neuroscience, and when we go out to schools, we always sort of speak to young people and ask them how many people in the room want to be a neuroscientist. Can you imagine how many people's hands go up? What do you think? One? Possibly. And that's maybe if they've had a brain injury. Yeah? Because they know what a neuroscientist is, what they do. We also asked the question around researchers. And it's really sad, actually, that young people don't know and aspire to be neuroscientists, because actually, when we're thinking about the study of the brain, it starts earlier. So we teach people about the brain and young people about the brain. We couple that with teaching them about emotions, around how their brain is linked with emotions and their environments are linked with emotions, and also how to identify positive and negative emotions in themselves and how to communicate that to their families and friends and people around them, and couple that with play. And the reason, I suppose, we chose play is we were thinking, okay, what are the environments where young people enjoy themselves the most? And we all know that play lights up your brain. It triggers all the reward pathways, and so it's like the opposite to depression, play. So we wanted to create context, online and offline, where young people could play but learn about themselves. And so by doing that, what we aim to do is support young people to deal with the difficult situations that are going on in their lives. We can't change the world, and young people will experience bad things. So we want to be able to provide the support for them to be able to deal with those bad things, to understand themselves, and be able to then communicate how they're feeling with the people around them, to be able to access support and act on the advice around support, and to be able to also care for each other. And why that's really critical is because between the ages of around 12 onwards, young people will go to their peers for support straight away. They'll stop going to their parents and stop accessing support and asking their parents. They'll go to their peers. So it's really important other young people are able to provide that support at that time. So what we were interested in doing is thinking about how we can bring evidence-based approaches that are used, and whether that's psychological therapy and psychoeducation, within approaches like cognitive behavioral therapy, within narrative therapy, within sort of counseling skills and developmental skills, and also within neuroscience education, so understanding what's happening with the brain, neuroplasticity, just the basic structures of the brain. Couple that with the environments that young people are living in, so a 24/7 plugged-in world with access to social media. Often the psychology behind that is keeping them addicted to scrolling and engaging with social media, using mobile apps to access support, and often typing how they're feeling rather than verbalizing how they're feeling to other people. Thinking about how immersive technology can be used to support young people identify and regulate emotions within themselves. So examples of that are how we use VR is with young people who are incredibly sort of stressed and overwhelmed. We might put them within a calm and relaxing environment, and then we ask them to identify how they're feeling. In the same way, young people who experience panic attacks, we might put them on a roller coaster ride, which sounds quite ironic because physiologically the same thing's happening to your body when you're anxious on a roller coaster ride as when you're having a panic attack. So young people are able to identify the two different states and be able to control it. And then, most importantly, creating safe spaces for themselves, because young people are at home, are at school, are online, and often don't feel safe in certain areas. So where could we deliver the program so young people could feel safe? And again, at the core of that, doing it through play. So over the past couple of years, we've been working with a range of collaborators. The Wellcome Trust, which is a biomedical foundation, initially funded us to develop the program and pilot the program within different contexts and schools. Oh, bet you're thinking, what's going on? I went back and said, okay. The Wellcome Trust. I'll talk about the different games that we have, but we received like some seed social investment. We work with national charities in the UK, like the Children's Society, to pilot and spread the adoption. We're a collaborating partner of Alder Hey Children's Hospital in the Northwest and Southport and Ormskirk as well. So we deliver our programs and work with clinical partners. And we, within our team, have a range of people who are early stage researchers and PhD researchers, so we're constantly doing research in this area. So we were really clear that at the beginning we had to think about how we could, one, make it sustainable, financially sustainable, how we could, two, evaluate the impact of what we were doing and how that could be embedded within the program, and also, three, make it fun, which is quite hard. You're trying to bring them all together. So just to go through our Young Leaders program, and that font is so small you can't even see it, but you can see it on our website. Our program now is developed into a 12-week program that we deliver offline, and the first 4 weeks are all around the brain structure, so understanding the structure of the brain, understanding neuroplasticity, how people develop memories, the brain development and child development, and we do that through play. So we've created a range of different games to teach young people. So we don't stand at the front. We will. Okay. Yeah. And when you see some of our games, how we started, you'll think, wow, that's basic. Because we start with paper all the time and we develop it. So as you can see up there, that was our first neurotransmit brain. So instead of young people just learning about the brain, they do a mini puzzle in teams to develop brain. That then developed a little bit more into our 3D printed brain. That you can see there, which is like a 12-piece brain puzzle where people battle and build the brains together. We also, and this is the initial start of a game you can see at the bottom called our Battle of the Brain Robots game. So we actually just bought plastic robots initially online, stuck a Neuro Champions sticker on them, created a brain on the floor, created the questions and the quiz questions, and again got young people into teams to race the robots to different parts of the brain to answer the questions. So the reason why we did it really cheap, and if anybody's running a startup organization, is one, we wanted to see if young people were engaging in the games. Two, we wanted to see what the learning outcomes were of those games as well. And three, we wanted to see, again, if there was a point for using technology. Because sometimes we can create things and it's pointless and no one's going to buy it. And we can spend a lot of time developing it. So we always start with paper-based prototypes that we'll take out to a lot of people at public engagement events to trial them out. The second I suppose, phase of the program is teaching young people about how they link with emotions with the brain. So we teach about positive mental health, we teach about mental ill health, because a lot of the time the focus is on mental ill health. So depression, anxiety, low mood, bipolar, schizophrenia. And when we ask young people about positive mental health, and often one thing that's been good that's happened to you this week, which sounds quite simple, they can't identify something. So sometimes the focus in mental health is always on mental ill health and regulating behavior, but actually we need to be thinking about sometimes positive emotions as well and how we get young people to express those. Looking at the power of difference as well. And so our program, we don't position it as an intervention, it's a leadership program. Young people are learning about themselves. So if they've experienced a bad experience in the past, and that might be linked to physical abuse at home, psychological abuse, sexual abuse, they might have experienced a trauma. And I talk about these things because in mental health, we often don't. We make these sort of like nice games, but actually we've got to think about some of the core pain points that the young people have been through, because if we can't talk about them, we can't incorporate them in our games, then they won't be able to express them and they won't feel safe to do that. And then how they can support other people and other young people with mental health problems. And the third section is where then we start to get young people to create tools for their peers. And that might be through animations. So they can create animations across a specific topic. So we'll teach them how to create animations. It might be through games. So we have 3D printers, and one young person created a fidget spinner. So they'll design different games, and then we'll go and put them and implement them within their schools as well. It might be using immersive technology or play. So we've got like a mini studio where young people can learn how to use Vuforia if they want to create augmented reality apps. We also have sort of like different physical games as well and paper-based games so they can draw, create, and storyboard. So we give them all the tools that they want to create positive environments and positive interventions for other young people. So it's not driven by us and what we want. They're then the creators of the interventions. So this is just an example of an animation that a young person has created.
We've all felt anger at some point in our lives, whether it's because of a fight with a sibling, getting frustrated over a game, or maybe just getting a bit angry. But what exactly is happening in our brains when we're angry? A lot of what happens has to do with our amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure in the center of our brain. amygdala is known as our threat detector, and it's responsible for sending out an alarm through our brain and body when it thinks we're in danger, giving us the chance to protect ourselves. The amygdala coordinates the release of the neurotransmitter catecholamines, which causes a burst of energy. At the same time, our fight or flight response is triggered. This causes our body to flood with the hormones adrenaline and noradrenaline. Our heart rate increases, our attention focuses, our breathing gets quicker, and our digestion stops to save energy. Our blood flow increases throughout our body, getting our muscles ready for action. The increased blood flow also reaches our faces, which might get a bit flushed, which is why people get described as being red with anger. Being in this state means that our body is prepared for a fight. Have you ever struggled to remember what was said during a really explosive argument? The high level of arousal makes it difficult for new memories to be formed, because our ability to concentrate is significantly decreased. As a threat detector, the amygdala works so fast that an alarm is sent out and we start to physically react before our prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for helping us weigh up our decisions and actions, can even recognize that there's a threat. It takes us about 300 milliseconds to be aware of a threat, but our amygdala will react to the same threat in about 20 milliseconds. Our brains work so that we can react to something quickly, but this means we don't really have time to think about the consequences. This might be why when you lose at your video game, you throw your remote across the room in anger, regardless of what it might hit or break. The amygdala is overriding the prefrontal cortex. However, we do have control over this instinctive response. Something as simple as chewing gum can activate our parasympathetic nervous system. This is the opposite to our fight or flight response. It's our rest and digest response. By chewing gum, the body is forced to prepare for digestion, which it would not do in the fight or flight response. Actively controlling our breathing also activates our parasympathetic nervous system. It decreases our heart rate, lowers blood pressure, and slows breathing. You can try it now. Breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds, and then breathe out through your mouth for 6 seconds. Do this a few times. How do you feel? So remember, the amygdala is our brain's threat detector. The amygdala reacts quicker to threats than our prefrontal cortex. And when we're angry, it can be hard to remember what we said.
That's just an example of one of the videos, and what we do is we give them to young people to share with other young people on WhatsApp. And we also now build mini posters for schools and have triggers on them, so young people can go with the apps on the trigger and then see the video pop up. So we use, I suppose, the information that the young people have created in the sessions to share health messages with their peers. What we have been doing now is training teachers to deliver the program in schools, youth workers, and in hospitals as well. So we have like an accredited train the trainer program, and we have a Neuro Champions app as well, where people can visualize the groups and the outputs of the groups. We have a bot that's built within it so they can ask us questions about the brain and neuroscience. We have quizzes that are built internally within it. So for anybody who's facilitating the program, they can access all the resources, the information, but also visualize all the outcomes of the work that they've done. And so we're still, I guess, quite small. We've worked with 218 young leaders across programs, and we've run workshops and groups and engaged within different types of work that we've done. Over 3,000 people within usually clinical or community and school settings. We're constantly training facilitators, and with what we're doing is we've always been really interested in the different kinds of data that we can collect with the work that we do. So we do pre and post measures of knowledge. We do measures of mental health and hyperactivity and communication and social skills. So we've got sort of a social impact tool, which we call our Neuro Chest, which looks at the cost of the programs, which looks at the health outcomes, in this specific case, the mental health outcomes of children and young people. the education and learning outcomes, so knowledge that they've learned about the brain and themselves, the social outcomes, so the interrelatability and how they can connect with their peers, and also how long the program is. And so we collect information and data in a range of different ways. That might be through videos, that might be through self-report measures. If young people are using the VR to relax, we also have sort of wearable stress monitors, so we check heart rate, and we put them all together within our sort of refined data lake and identify different trends. You can find information about our impact, but this is just a bit of information, I suppose, around some of the outcomes. So for every group and every program that we run, we have an impact report. And just to finish, some of the work that we do is straddled with research as well. So I'm principal investigator on this study, looking at managing mental health in the school environment and looking at how data can be used, whether that's visual data, whether that's written data, from a school environment to predict and identify mental health problems in children and young people. And within that, we've trained up young co-researchers to work on the program with us. And also, finally, because I'm getting flashed and I know I'm talking too much, one of the biggest things, and I suppose this is the takeaway from there, a big thing came up about ethics and the lack of knowledge that young people sometimes have around ethics and consent and their data. And when thinking about creating digital tools specifically for young people, I think we all have a responsibility to think about the consent that they're providing and the ethical landscape, because that information can be used, I suppose, in the future, and especially around mental health, and especially because we're still in its infancy of thinking about how we interpret data for diagnosis. So, yeah, ethics. Thank you very much for listening.